What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. It is Wednesday, the 28th of August, and we are broadcasting from a hotel in Waikiki. We have a little ocean view out the window, but it's too bright for the camera, so I'm not going to show it to you. I tweeted out a picture of it earlier today, and we seem to have a moderately decent internet connection here. It's a little better than the one we had out on Kauai. Obviously not as good as a hardwire, but we are going to try and get through the show today. So the phone lines are open. Feel free to call on in. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. Now, obviously, the big news today, everyone's watching Hurricane Dorian. It is now officially a hurricane, and it is headed right for Puerto Rico. Originally, they thought it was going to pass to the west. Then it shifted east. Now they think there's a possibility it could actually go right straight over San Juan. There's still arguing back and forth. How strong will it get? The worst case scenario, of course, being that it will be a Cat 3 hurricane by the time it makes landfall someplace on the east coast of the United States right around Labor Day, which is also when Clara and I are flying to our new home. So that's going to be a lot of fun here. All righty, so getting into some of the other news. And, I mean, look at all the stuff that just really happened in my absence. And I got to be very honest. This move was a distraction. It did take me away from the news, and I did miss a lot. I did catch Trump's comment about being the chosen one, and everybody came on out and said it sounds very messianic, which it did. And Trump tried to cover it up and saying I was just joking. You guys should understand when I'm sarcastic. Well, sarcasm is something you see, you know, in office workers. This is the president of the United States of America, and people are, in fact, going to take pretty much everything that you say seriously. And Donald, I'm sorry, it was a dumb thing to be saying. So anyway, getting on into things, let's talk some more about Donald Trump. And let's see, more and more of this Trump bashing. By the way, do you remember called Fefe that Trump tweeted out and the media said, we have no idea what it's talking about? It actually does have a meaning. It simply says, I will stand up. And anyway, I'm going to be jumping around on the news here a little bit. So I think probably one of the big news stories, of course, is that Israel has attacked Iraq. They've also attacked Lebanon and Syria, but they've attacked Iraq. It's like the first time in decades. And the real heavy news there is that Russia intervened and prevented a second strike. Now, even the United States is saying that Israel should not be attacking Iraq right now, but all of this is about Netanyahu wanting to look butch for his upcoming election. And so he's trying to pick a fight with anybody, whether it's Lebanon or Syria or Iraq, and just, you know, just bomb people because it's good for his election chances. All right, so a lot of stuff going on in the economic news here. And like I said, I'm going to jump around here because I don't have my second screen where normally I would organize my talking points. But apparently, as the labor market continues to tighten up, more and more work is being done remotely. People working from home. Claire does that. Obviously, I do that. Interestingly enough, when we were having our free continental breakfast, we met some people where they work remotely from home on various tasks. And obviously, it's going to lower overhead for the companies that they work for. But it does seem the labor market is changing. I remember when they had another name for it, was called telecommuting, where computer professionals could just stay at home, have a computer at home, work over the internet. And unfortunately, the phenomenon, if you will, was done in by middle management, which realized that if they didn't have an office full of bodies to oversee, they didn't really have a job. So we'll see if there's going to be a similar response to remote working here. Anyway, apparently Wall Street thinks there's a 90% chance of a September rate cut. And I want to tell you right now, the credit card rates are through the roof, and that became an issue for us. I mean, after years and years of Claire and I working to get our credit card bills almost paid off, and now they're maxed out again thanks to M. Dyer and Sons. And I got to put in a little bit of a gratuitous complaint here. They sent over this truck with these guys on there, and we kept walking these people around and saying, this is going to Indiana, this is going, this is going, this is going, and they would nod and say yes, yes, yes. And it wasn't till the end of the day that we realized they didn't actually speak English. They're just nodding and saying yes, to make it look like they do. And so a lot of stuff that we had planned to throw in the trash is now on its way to Indiana. And a lot of stuff that we wanted to go to Indiana, we have now had to pay out of our own pocket on our credit cards to ship to Indiana. We still don't have the final bill on that, but it's going to be in the thousands of dollars. And this has reaffirmed my opinion that there should be an English language requirement for people to live and work here in the United States of America. And I know I'm going to get all kinds of emails saying you're being racist. I'm not being racist. I'm being pragmatic. How do you get a country to work together if they don't understand each other? If we've turned our nation into the Tower of Babel, and nobody can get along with each other because you got these people over here speaking English, these people over here are speaking Spanish, these people over here are speaking Chinese, these people over here are speaking Tagalog or whatever it was that they're speaking. Now, our next door neighbor actually happens to be a driver for M. Dwyer and Sons, and he says it's a major problem. They like to hire these big, strong bodies that are willing to work for minimum wage, and they don't speak English. And it says it has caused all kinds of problems for the end customers, none of which, by the way, was in the Yelp reviews, I might add, which undermines the fact that there are now companies that for a fee will go clean up your online reputation. Anyway, so apparently over at Johnson & Johnson, they're still arguing back and forth on how much they're going to be paying for that opioid scandal. And meanwhile, of course, the corporate media is out there saying, well, that's that Chinese Silk Road, that's going to be the new drug pipeline, and we really ought to do something about that. Ascena, ASCENA, has 3,500 stores. They may file for bankruptcy. And by the way, I was surprised at how many vacancies there were down here in Waikiki, which is considered some of the prime tourist retail real estate on Earth. Wall Street is predicting that gold will probably hit $2,000 or higher as early as next year. And it's just out there. Okay, over in Great Britain, because it was just now playing on the news here, apparently Boris Johnson is floating this idea of temporarily suspending Parliament in order to get them out of the way of moving Brexit forward. And as a matter of fact, we shared our table at breakfast this morning with a couple from England. And we were joking around about it. They're no happier with the progress of Brexit than anybody else. They're very angry with Parliament for ignoring the will of the British voters. And I was saying, where's Guy Fawkes when you really need him? That got a good laugh. But apparently, the Queen has given her approval for Boris Johnson to do this, to literally shut the Parliament down for about a month, and they'll reconvene shortly before the final vote on Brexit, which is going to be on Halloween of this year. So that's kind of complex over there. What a mess. What an absolute mess. Looks like India and Pakistan are still making stink face at each other and could actually start a shooting war over the Kashmir. And that's going to be a problem because, again, India and Pakistan are both nuclear-armed nations. And it doesn't seem that there's a lot of restraint involved in this process. Apparently over at CNN, they're feeling the pressure. There have been 4 reports of assaults incited by CNN journalists in just the last 6 weeks. So I guess things are getting tense over there. Apparently over in Missouri, a judge just blocked the state's 8-week abortion ban. Keep going back and forth on that one. It does seem like there is a great deal of chaos in our society right now. Everybody's arguing with everybody. Everybody's hurling insults at everybody. There's no more peaceful, rational dialogue. It's screaming insults until you get your... It's winning through intimidation. And there actually was a book by that title back, I think it was in the 60s. Now, Australia, of course, is coming out of their winter, just as we're coming out of our summer. But they are now forecast to get the most snow in the last 20 years. And by the way, the Obamas just bought beachfront, so much for the rising sea levels here. Okay. Apparently, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has appealed to Donald Trump to try and make a case against the Electoral College, and Trump has now rebuffed her. Oh, here's a good one if you're a Border Patrol agent down on the border. And by the way, they're still out there screaming about how, you know, the evil Donald Trump is forcing girls to endure their periods without having pads or changes of clothes down the border. Look, whose fault is that? It's the fault of the girls for stepping across the border. It's the fault of the parents for bringing them across the border. They're trying to make it sound like Trump dragged all these people up here from Mexico, then threw them in prison in order to abuse them, and that's really ridiculous. But apparently along the way, the Border Patrol seized 10 pounds of methamphetamine disguised as ice pops. If you're my age, you call them popsicles. You know, a little frozen juice on the sticks and they split in half. Apparently, these were actually solidified methamphetamine. That's a lot of meth, 10 pounds. Over in Los Angeles, they've started a project called Skid Row Clean Team. They're paying the homeless $15 an hour to pick up the trash. I think it's a good idea. It needs an end game where the homeless, when they have done so much service, are assisted on getting into a home whose rent they can pay with that $15 an hour. I think that would be a really good idea. All righty. Lori Loughlin is back in court Tuesday for a hearing related to the college admissions scandal. She and her husband, Massimo Giannulli, attempted to avoid the media by slipping through a back door. Basically, they bought their daughter's way into a prestige school. Okay. Apparently at a school, there was this female student, 9 years old, and she was sent home when her parents told that her tank top distracted the boys at school. Amazing here. And Bill Maher, half the time I like what he says. The other time I say no. And apparently he says he hopes the end was painful for David Koch. That is cruel. That is heartless. It really, really is. Excuse me a second. Okay, you have probably been hearing all over the corporate news about how the Amazon is burning down. It's the lungs of the world, which is not true. The oceans are. And, it's because of human-caused global warming and something must be done. But apparently there has been some fact-checking involving satellite pictures, data from Brazil itself, data from NASA, showing it isn't happening. And somebody realized that the corporate media are using pictures and videos from 30 years ago to sell this story that the Amazon is just totally burning up, and somehow or other it's all our fault because we won't pay carbon taxes here. Alrighty. Apparently another attack on a man wearing a MAGA hat. Okay, Lawrence O'Donnell is trying to reignite the Russian narrative using a single anonymous source saying that Donald Trump's loans have Russian co-signers, one of whom is very good friends with Vladimir Evil Putin. Okay. Apparently, this former NBA player has been acquitted of rape, even though the video shows him dragging the struggling alleged victim in the nude. That would be pretty convincing to me. But it's becoming obvious in this society that people above a certain station of life, celebrities, the wealthy, the connected, they can get away with stuff. And it seems like that line that you need to cross over to get away with that kind of stuff keeps getting lower and lower. All right, William Barr is getting ready to charge former director Andrew McCabe for lack of candor numerous times. Barr's IG is out there saying that all 4 of the FISA warrants were invalid. They were fraudulently obtained. So Biden is in a little bit of trouble. His poll numbers are going down. A lot of people are starting to say, please, Hillary, save us from Donald Trump. Trump's got a couple of GOP challengers for the primary. I think he's got 3 of them now. But apparently, Biden keeps making so many gaffes that even his wife seems to have lost interest. All right, I want to talk about this amazing burger that is out there by Burger King. And it's a completely plant-based burger patty that they are claiming tastes exactly like beef, exactly like a Whopper. And apparently it does. But here is the problem. It isn't meat. And the chemicals they put in it to make it taste like meat, people aren't really sure how harmless they are. And to add fuel to the fire, apparently Kentucky Fried Chicken is getting ready to use a plant-based simulant of chicken. Okay, we're going to take a break here for commercials. Join us on the air, and we will be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about Joe Biden's sinking in the polls because of the gaffes that he's making and the perception that maybe he is a little too old for the job. And as a matter of fact, Fox News was just running a story here where they're showing about how the latest Quinnipiac poll is showing that Trump is trailing behind the top Democratic candidates. But the really revealing thing about this poll results is that Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren are all within a single percentage point of each other. Now, at this point, it worries me that the Democrats haven't really fielded what I would see a credible candidate. And that worries me that there may be another movement to draft Hillary back in. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. David in California. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, first off, congrats on all the time you've put into the show from Hawaii, and I can't imagine, what's going through your mind as far as you can't stay, but you got to leave, but you love it, and all that stuff. So I know what it's like to move.
Yeah. You know what's really amazing though, because we were, talking to some people again at breakfast, and, they're saying, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we actually live here, but we're getting ready to move to Indiana." And there's these looks of incredulity on some of the faces saying, "You live here in Hawaii, but you're moving to Indiana." Like,
ass backwards, isn't it?
Get the butterfly nets. Something is wrong with these people.
Well, I just have one comment. I think, I think you mentioned at one show you were going to keep the aloha. But I say, if you're going to move to Indiana, why don't you open the show with, "Who's your daddy?"
I love it.
Who's your daddy?
Who's your daddy? Okay, I love it. Yeah, that's a good one.
You're from Indiana now, and so you're who's your daddy, but you're just saying who's your daddy. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll always be from Boston. I've just lived a lot of really cool, interesting places around the world, and I've lived and worked in places like London and Rome, Munich, Milan, Sydney, Australia, Honolulu, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and now Indiana. Yeah.
But you know what, man? It's so cool. You're getting back to nature, getting back to roots, getting back to reality in a lot of ways. And Indiana's a good place to do it.
Well, the upside there is, again, we have family there, some of whom are medical professionals. And, that's kind of a blessing here when you look at the way that our HMO treated my wife when she broke her back last year. And that's a situation I don't want to have to go through all by myself ever again. Well, I'm hoping not have to go through it at all. But at our AGE, things break. I mean, I kind of wrecked my knee with the final packing here, and I'm gimping around almost as badly as she is. So
you make me feel old every time you do that. I'm 68 now. So I got, a year on you, I guess. But every time you say that, I'm going, "Ooh, man, this sounds old."
Well,
it's all a mindset, man.
Well, it is a mindset. And at the moment, I do feel old. And tomorrow's my 67th birthday. And
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And so what I'm going to do for tomorrow's show is stick a candle on top of this laptop and set it on fire. And
Jimi Hendrix style.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix. I'm gonna burn up the computer.
There you go. Well, congrats. Safe voyage. Who's your daddy? And all that stuff.
I like that. I think I'm probably going to use that.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again. And let's get on back here. So Fox News is still going on about the poll numbers from this latest poll. And they do seem to be obsessed with it. But there's a lot of non-reporting going on, because I haven't seen anywhere in the corporate media where they're talking about how Israel just hauled off and bombed Iraq and would have done it again if it hadn't been for the intervention of the Russians. I haven't seen anything on the corporate media about India and Pakistan getting ready to fling rockets at each other. And it does feel like we are being definitely conditized and distracted. We're being fed with manufactured news here, of which the biggest distraction is, of course, the political campaign. Alrighty. So let's see. Apparently there was this Antifa professor. Have you noticed they're trying to polish Antifa's image? Oh, Antifa are just peaceful people who are trying to protect the liberals. But apparently there was this professor who's a member of Antifa, was saying he wanted to bash Trump with a baseball bat and bury Christians. He's been forced to resign, and I think that's really a very good thing. All right. We have callers waiting on the line. We've got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Or maybe I should get into practice. Who's your daddy? Welcome back to the show. And we've got a caller waiting on the line, Mike in Brazil. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. How does it feel moving?
Mixed feelings. Obviously I really loved it here in Hawaii. But I figure maybe, first of all, the cost of living here has just gone right through the roof. Second of all, with people talking about a real shooting war between Russia and China, this island will get hit. I mean, Americans' involvement in World War II started right here on this rock I'm sitting on. And finally, of course, the other issue is being close to family who can be supportive in the event that there's another incident like happened last year, because we had virtually no support at all when Claire injured her back, and that's something I don't want to see her have to do again.
Yeah, I hear you, Mike. I have the same problem. I have a 7 hernias in my spine, and
ouch.
What they call Schormel syndrome, which is deterioration of the spinal cord. And I read you real well. But anyway, let me get to the reason I called in. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about 3 things. The fires in the Amazon.
Yes.
I think I'm well qualified because I live in the Amazon, basically.
Yes.
Second is our Congress. And third is gun control. Okay, so remind me if I skip any one of these things, because I'm your age. Please give me your sympathies.
You have mine. You have it.
Thank you. But anyway, Mike. First of all, this thing about the fires in the Amazon. I live 2 degrees south of the equator, which is basically the heart of the Amazon. The rumors have it. Okay, I say rumors because none have been confirmed. Is that people from outside of Brazil set up the fires as a reason to take down Bolsonaro. Everybody hates Bolsonaro as much as they hate Donald Trump. And if there are 2 people in this world that can stop the advance of this communist garbage throughout the world, these Marxists, is Bolsonaro and Donald Trump. I know Donald Trump goofs a lot. He says things that he shouldn't be saying. And so does Bolsonaro. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking sides here, but what I'm trying to say is this: that these fires, which basically I just came back from Manaus, okay, which is in the heart of the Amazon, and the plane flew right across the Amazon jungle. I could not see one speck of smoke. All of it is to the north of the Brazilian jungle, which borders Venezuela. And the rumors have it that Maduro or somebody working on his behalf did this, actually arson at a grand scale, just to make Bolsonaro look bad. I don't know if I don't buy into this. But
I don't buy that one.
This is just, yeah, me neither. Yeah, but I just said this because it's floating around. So in case you hear it again, this is what, basically what the story is. I'm not sure Maduro had anything to do with this. I'm positive about this. But this is what people are talking about, people who hate Maduro. But second, okay, if it's okay for Boris Johnson to dissolve the parliament, why is it so difficult for us to dissolve Congress? I mean, look at these people. I mean, they're getting now back in session with a new gun control agenda, which brings me to my third point I was going to make, the gun control. They're trying to completely gut our Second Amendment rights. And
yes.
Imagine if you would be reading these headlines in the newspaper that Congress convenes to discuss the First Amendment issues. How would you feel about it? I don't think I would feel very good. Your comment.
Well, my comment is, of course, is that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is supposed to be the property of we, the American people. Congress is supposed to work for us as temporary custodians of our sovereignty, not get up there and say, well, we're just going to change the rules by which we work because we're going to be much more comfortable if you're all disarmed. That would be like, you know, you hire a janitor for your building, and the janitor just goes on in and says, I'm going to rewrite my contract. And you're going to give me a lot more money, and I get to take home a lot more of the office supplies for free, and you can't fire me. That's how Congress has been behaving. Now, obviously, the reason for the push for gun control is they're afraid of us. The U.S. government is afraid of the American people because we are angry. We are ticked off. Let's not pull any punches. You know, we're furious. To heck with anger management, we're annoyed. And the government understands that. And the government also understands that they're going to lose all these wars unless they can find more ways to take more money away from the American people to pay for the bombs and the bullets and the butter and the bandages. And that's really what it's coming on down to. And if you study like the history of, well, for example, Germany toward the closing days of that war, how literally they had to plunder and loot their own people to keep the war effort going, and they still lost. But if you look at the poor quality of weapons that are coming out of our military-industrial complex, you read all these stories about how maintenance funds have been deferred, and a lot of our weapon systems are not in good shape. And then you read all these other stories about how, well, the U.S. needs to go in here, and the U.S. needs to go in here, and we've got to go fight these people over there. And you realize it's on a collision course. The Federal Reserve can't just keep creating money out of thin air to pay for the war machine because that risks collapsing the value of the dollar. So the only way they can keep this whole thing going. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Why is that every presidential candidate throughout our history, I mean, recent history, is refusing to take on the issue of the Federal Reserve? Because it doesn't seem, I mean, I asked a lot of people here on the street in Brazil, how would you like to know that your central bank is issuing your money, which represents the totality of the goods and services in circulation, as a loan at interest? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And, you know, people say, what are you saying? Well, I said, what I'm saying is that the central bank is issuing our money as a loan at interest, and you're paying for that. And the guy said, oh, no, I would never approve that. I said, well, this is exactly what is happening. And this happens throughout the world, except from maybe 3 or 4 countries that don't have a central bank, a private central bank. But let me ask you another question, my last one, and I'll go because I'm sure you have callers on the line. How do we go about suspending Congress, dissolving Congress at least temporarily? Who has the authority to do this?
Technically, nobody, and I think one of the reasons why what Boris Johnson has done and the Queen have done are so upsetting to people is there really wasn't a mechanism for that under British law, other than the fact that the Queen is a sovereign ruler who can say, yeah, Boris, go ahead and do this. So, but here in the United States of America, the only way Congress can be suspended is for them to be voted out of office, or for us to simply ignore everything that they're saying and doing. But in the end, I think this country is headed for a major collapse. And I hope it's going to be economic and not military.
So we're stuck with these guys, you're saying?
Well, something that has occurred to me over all the many years that I have been doing this, you know, you go after a corrupt politician, you work really hard to get them thrown out of office, only to discover there is a whole line of equally corrupt opportunists who are lined up to take that guy's or gal's place. And it's like there's a significant portion of our population who thinks this is a perfectly good way to run a country. And they just want their turn at the trough.
Oh my God, Mike, you just confirmed my suspicions. Okay, unfortunately, it looks like it's inevitable. Like JFK once said, long time ago, like Don McLean in that famous song, long time ago.
Yes.
Okay, the guy said that if a peaceful revolution is being made impossible, a violent one is inevitable. And you know, by golly, I tell you, he was right. Because
Yes.
look, I'm reading the news every day, and I don't see any improvement. Everything goes down the tubes, Mike. I don't know what's going to happen to this country. Kids are getting indoctrinated into deviant lifestyles, including sexual deviancy and all the stuff. And I was talking to my wife the other day. I said, God, my God, what is happening to this place? And she said, it's not only in the U.S., it's in Brazil the same. And then I tuned in the Brazilian news networks, and bingo, right there. You know, it's the same thing. Looks like it's a global platform. It looks like somebody's pulling the strings all over the planet. The same individual or individuals. So I don't know. I don't like to see any bloodshed. I hate violence. You know, but it looks like at this point, Mike, it's inevitable. And I advise people who have firearms to keep them all oiled and all ready to fire because they're going to need them. And it's going to be probably sooner than they think. So anyway, Mike, with this last thought, I'm going to let you go, and you're going to let me go. And, hey, have a nice move. I hope you're going to be very happy in Indiana. And maybe one day, who knows, I'm planning on traveling back to the States next year. So maybe I'll come and shake hands with you and have a couple of beers.
Well, hopefully from Indiana, I'm going to be able to get out and do a lot more public speaking here because I certainly wasn't able to do much of that here in Hawaii other than to some local groups. Anyway, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
All right, Mike, take care now.
All right. And, yeah, I think a large part of what's been going on around the world over the last decade goes back to... Goes.
So at our age, things break. I kind of wrecked my knee.
Okay, we still have an open phone line. Anyway, I think a large part of what we've been seeing happening around the world for the last 10 years goes back to that agenda of a new world order, one world government, globalist society. The problem is it's not working out. It was truly believed by the liberals, who still worship at the altar of Margaret Mead, that they were going to be able to like dump all these people together into each other's countries. They were going to give each other hugs, sing Kumbaya, and get along just fine. Well, it didn't happen. We've seen the violence all over Europe is a good example of that. And we've seen how simply throwing people into each other's countries without a language requirement can cause a great deal of difficulty, as it did Claire and I. Okay? And again, I'm not being racist. I'm being practical here. You cannot have a smoothly functioning country with, with everybody. Okay, we're dealing with some technical issues here. You cannot have a smoothly functioning country if you've got 20 or 30 different languages. Again, remember the story of the Tower of Babel. Everybody was speaking the same language. They were building this tower to reach up to heaven, and God smote them, knocked down the tower, and gave them... Okay, Mike, we're getting some feedback from RBN. I think there's an open phone line or something.
Rockets at each other. And it does feel like we are being decolonized.
Boy, that's like from a long time ago. Are all the phone lines closed? Because that's a real old piece of tape.
Which is the biggest
All right. Well, I'm going to go back to trying to report the news, even with all this junk on the line. Korea is back in the news, and it's not that Korea has done anything. It's that somebody has made the decision that Korea needs to be made an issue of again. And so all morning on the news, we've been seeing this story about how Satellite photos are showing that North Korea is building a submarine that could launch a nuclear ballistic missile. Horror of horrors, those evil North Koreans, something must be done about them. The only problem is they showed the photos. These photos are from like almost a year ago when they were running the exact same story. And they're reviving it. They're using old stuff. It's like that. We are. You know, it's like that story that they're using 30-year-old footage to sell the story about the Amazon being on fire. It's all manufactured. It's all fake to keep you dazzled and distracted. Keep you looking in the wrong way. Anyway, well, apparently some of the Democratic candidates have started dropping out, or at least sort of kind of maybe dropping out. It's not official yet. It's not official. So, now, here's a very interesting story. So normally, when you will see a police officer beat somebody on video, and it happens a lot, the officers get to keep their jobs in spite of the evidence of the attack. However, down in Atlanta, Georgia, there was an attack on a teenager by an Atlanta cop. It was so vicious, it put the kid into the hospital, and it did cost the officer his job, and now he has been sent to jail. He was sentenced to 20 years, 5 will be served in prison, 15 on probation. Up in Seattle, they're still arguing back and forth on how to remove the human poo from the sidewalks, because they've got this one councilman who was still out there arguing that power washers are racist. So, and that's because hoses were used against blacks in the past. Well, hoses are used for a lot. What are you going to do? Ban the fire department? Is that how silly this whole social justice warrior, trigger stuff is going to be? Let's ban the fire departments because hoses were used on the blacks in the past. In fact, it was fire hoses that were used rather than power washers. All right, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. So we're talking about how up in Seattle, where they're still at a logjam. The human poo is piling up on the sidewalks, and the reason they can't do anything about it is there is a councilman who is out there saying power washers are racist since hoses were used against blacks in the past. And of course, I pulled the reducto ad absurdum saying, what are we going to do? Ban the fire departments now? Because back in the days of those civil rights riots, those were fire hoses. So, sorry, man, we have to let your house burn to the ground. The councilman says the hoses are racist. Fire hoses are now racist. Oxygen hoses are now racist. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. And it illustrates a problem that is affecting our society as a whole. We're allowing symbolism and the possibility of offense to take priority over just getting things done. Now, the reality is the poo must go. And if that councilman doesn't want to use a power washer, give him a shovel. Give him a toothbrush. But get the job done and start arguing about how you're going to do it because somebody somewhere on the planet might be offended. Because I'll guarantee you this right now, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, there's going to be somebody that'll be offended by it because we have bred a society, we've bred a generation rather, of people whose entire self-worth is based on always being offended by something. So let's go to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. I may have to take you across the station identification. What's on your mind?
We're all in the poo.
Yes, we are. It's reaching the flood stage.
I want to talk about three topics, and the first one is you mentioned with Boris Johnson suspending the Parliament, asking the Queen for 5 weeks. And Mike, I got a question for you and anybody who's listening from Britain. What's going to happen with the City of London? And I'm not talking about London. I'm talking about the banking system, the City of London. And I'm also, what's going to happen to the EU, because they're not going to be getting that money that they use to fund themselves for the EU. I think the EU's in trouble if Britain leaves, right? Because Britain's the second largest economy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Britain and Germany have been propping up the economy of the rest of the EU for all these years, and that's why they've been fighting Brexit as hard as they can. When Britain breaks free, that leaves Germany to carry the weight of the entire EU, and the German people are not happy about that, coupled with the resentment over the open borders policy. This could shatter the entire EU, and personally, I think that would be a really good thing. I think all of these unions, globalism, anti-nationalism, I think it's a bad direction to go. Anyway, we got to take a break here for station identification. Stay on the line, Dustin. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. We've got callers waiting on the line here. So let's get back to Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, you were talking about, just pick it up from where you left it off.
Leaves me with Brexit, but at a time where Germany's first quarter, they only had 1,000 jobs. We are either in or entering a bad recession, and this is happening now with what Brexit going on, which is going to make an awful mess of like the global economy, if it's not a mess already, which leads me to my next topic about Trump with this whole tariff thing. What's your take on him saying the Chinese called them? And I think he's not telling. I think he was dreaming. I think instead of sheep jumping over him on bed, it was a Chinese people jumping over him on the bed. The Chinese wouldn't lie and say we never called them. I mean, and Mike, I saw Jim Cramer on CNBC. He goes, well, even if he wasn't telling the truth, it's good for the markets. It's all a scam. The whole market's a scam. I mean, this is how you prop up the economy.
Cramer just admitted the stock market is being manipulated with propaganda. Big shock. I know. Took all of you by surprise.
But if you watch Steve Mnuchin got involved when they asked him, and he goes, we're always talking to people. Trump made that up. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I never seen anything. And Mike, I said watch the bond market. How many times have we had that inverted yield curve now? It's like multiple times. I mean,
yeah, it's happening a lot. Well, I think part of the problem that we're dealing with here is that Trump does not have a firm grip on his own administration. And you've got all these different members who are running off with their own ideas about what should be done. And they're running off to the media to say, well, what we should be doing is this. And it doesn't represent official U.S. policy until Donald Trump says this is official U.S. policy, because good, bad, or indifferent, he is the president of the United States of America. And, Steve Mnuchin can make recommendations, but he really is not in a position to set the nation's economic policy. But there are too many loose cannons on the deck of the ship of state.
And that's also on CNBC, they had a discussion. Who are we going to believe, the communist Chinese or the president of the United States? And then I wish I could call in on them. I could say, well, I remember Iraq, Libya, Syria, the financial crisis of 2000. I mean, who to believe at this point, And my last topic before I get off the phone is, what's your take on Erdogan with Putin at the Max 2019 asking the Su-57s available to buy right now? Did you see that video?
Yeah, I caught that one. Well, the U.S. wants to play tough and say, you won't get the F-35 if you dare buy the Russian missiles. All right, we'll buy the Russian fighter planes. And it's just one bad choice after the other, after the other, after the other. And I think part of it is that Donald Trump really doesn't have a clear image of what it is he wants to do with this country in terms of, are we going to be making money? Are we going to be making war? Are we out there trying to sell stuff? Are we engaging in commerce? And he sort of leaps around from idea to idea to idea, and he's just leaving chaos in his wake. They should have never tried to arm twist Erdogan on the Russian S-400 system because, it placed the F-35 sale at risk. Now, at this point, it's beginning to become an open secret around the world that the F-35 is a piece of junk. And I think a lot of countries are looking for reasons to get out of their existing commitments.
And I find it amazing that our own media propped up the S-400 saying, this S-400, they kept talking about it. That's why everybody wants to buy it now. Because it's such a good system, first of all.
It's a formidable system. There's just no two ways about it. And it certainly outdoes Patriot. And, part of it is, again, our military-industrial complex is hideously inefficient. They can certainly soak up and spend a huge amount of money, but they don't spend it very well. And so we get these junky weapon systems and poor maintenance.
That's all, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, I want to ask you, what happened with Israel when they bombed Iraq? You say Russia interfered? What Russia do with it?
Yeah, Israel launched a second airstrike into Iraq, and they were basically warned off by Russian Sukhoi fighters. Fortunately, nobody pulled a trigger on each other, but the Israelis just decided they weren't going to tangle up with the aerial furball with the Russian fighters.
They need to have a couple of their aircraft shut down, the Israelis. Maybe a couple of their
well, see, that may be part of the issue. The Israelis may be, they're being told, don't risk having an F-35 get shot down, because if that were to happen, it would be a disaster for every American company involved in production of that aircraft. It's the world's single most expensive boondoggle aircraft, and if the Sukhoi were to shoot one down, get a lock on it and shoot it down, that's the end of the story. Everyone's going to say, this thing is junk. It's expensive. It's not stealthy. It's not maneuverable. It can't dogfight. And, it looks really great in a museum, but that's about all it's good for.
Well, maybe the Iranians need to shoot a couple of them down. Somebody needs to do it, you know what I mean? And then maybe the Israelis would stop their crap what they're doing. Because they're bullies. That's what they are. They're bullies, and they're trying to,
The Israelis are basically trying. Yeah.
Oh, I just want to ask you one other thing, kind of related. Talking about bad maintenance and all that, what do you think happened to that Russian missile that blew up there and supposedly caused some kind of a small nuclear explosion? I don't know if that's really true or not. But what do you think happened there?
Well, that was a prototype. I mean, they were testing. This is one of Putin's new nuclear-powered cruise missiles, where the air brought into the front of the engine is heated by nuclear fission and then squirted out the back. And it's not a new idea. The United States tried to do it once with Project Orion back in, I think it was the early 60s or late 50s, and they ran into problems with it. But Putin is convinced they can make it work, and it would, in fact, create a cruise missile / drone that could literally go anywhere on Earth by any path it chose to use.
Wow. By itself, huh? Just thinking on its own?
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, this AI is scaring me. I'm telling you. It's, I think Terminator when I see this kind of stuff, Yeah. The movie Terminator. That's what I start thinking more and more, I'm telling you, I wish, we had rational people in charge of all our countries there. They would get together and say, you know what, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there because we want to see our, mankind survive. We don't want robots to finally take over the entire Earth, But unfortunately, we don't have rational people. I consider Putin
no, we don't.
Huh? What?
Said no, we don't have rational people. I mean, they've already allowed robots to take over our global economic system.
Yeah, I mean, I consider Putin rational, but the problem is he's faced with irrational people, so he has to keep up. I don't think he really wants to put weapons like that out there. This is just, who knows what the Chinese might be working on top of it, and who knows what we might have there. Maybe the best thing would be like, some of these science fiction movies or something, or I understand it actually supposedly happened at a nuclear air base, that the space aliens come down and stop these things and then prevent the war from happening. They disable these nuclear weapons or something. I mean, it's just dreaming, of course, but who knows, right? I mean,
yes.
This kind of thing. You ever see that thing, by the way? It's on you see that on the History Channel and all that a lot of times, and other things. Ancient Aliens, where the this former, I forget his name. He's got some kind of a Spanish last name. He was a commander of a missile base back, I think, in the early 70s or late 60s, and they saw a UFO, and all their equipment, everything, the missiles, everything was disabled until the UFO disappeared. Do you believe that, or you think it's not?
Well, I think it was probably somebody's test of an advanced weapon systems. And again, as I've made clear, I have absolutely no doubt that the universe is filled with intelligent technological civilizations. I just can't see a reason why they'd bother visiting with us. But certainly we know that it was intentional on the part of the U.S. government to try and seed this idea of space aliens and flying saucers as a cover for the development of Black Project weaponry.
You don't believe Roswell really happened? You don't believe there was really a spacecraft that crashed?
No, it was a high-altitude balloon that was carrying sensors to try and detect nuclear tests. And that was ultra top secret. So the base commander just said, no, we'll just say it was a flying saucer, apparently not realizing that would kick off an even worse media firestorm.
Okay, I mean, like I said, I agree with you a lot of stuff that you say, but I kind of disagree in that. I kind of think that was something from another world. I can't prove it, of course, anymore, but I've been to that museum enough times. When I lived in Amarillo, Texas, I used to love to go to Roswell just to go to the museum. I went there about 4 or 5 times, and I'm fascinated by that. I really think it happened because of the fact that they reported it right away in the newspaper, and then a day later, they said, oh, no, it was a weather balloon. And I also go by the base, not the base commander, the base intelligence officer, Jesse Marcel, what he said, that he was told to say it was a weather balloon, but it was actually a UFO,
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike. Maybe we'll find out one of these days. Jordan Sacher, he's on YouTube all the time. Also, you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Destroying the illusions. Okay. He certainly believes this stuff. But then again, he's also into that. What do you call it again? That QAnon stuff, and I don't believe that. I think that's a bunch of hooey. It's distraction. So who knows, right?
Yep.
You ever have him on your show?
No, I've never had him on the show, and I'm not planning on booking any more guests until we get settled into the new permanent large studio. So I'm sure that there's all kinds of. No, I'm broadcasting from a hotel in Waikiki right now.
Oh, okay. I thought you were already in Indiana. Oh, okay. I was going to ask
no,
you.
No, we fly out on Saturday. We fly out on Saturday.
All right. Y'all have a good day. Be safe. And I think you'll like Indiana. It's not the Canada. You're not going to have the kind of weather, of course, you got in Hawaii, but people are really nice. I've been in Indiana enough times. People are they're super people. They're very similar as they are to here in North Carolina. So,
okay.
The earth type people. So I think you like it. And you'll find the cost of living a heck of a lot less than Hawaii.
Well, that's definitely something that we're looking forward to because, I'm going to have a lot of bills to pay off after this is all done.
Okay. All right. And like I said, the best, I'm going to get your address. Almost send you. I don't have a lot of money, but I'll send you what I can. Okay. But I want to see that I want you guys to be settled and all that. You know what I mean? And I know you could be a heck of a lot richer if you played the game. If you played the media game, the corporate media game. But you keeping your honor, and you're telling the truth. And people like you need to be.
Again, at my age, I'm sort of too old to rejoin the major corporate media. But if you look at the donor page at the What Really Happened website, I've already changed the payee name and the mailing address, so you can just anything to share, you can send through that. I have to reset up all of our new banking, and I'm going to be setting up a new version of Home Baked Entertainment in Indiana. Not that there's a lot of film and TV work there, but I do want to have a business shell. So
I'd rather
anyway,
check or cash, because I don't trust. I don't like to do too many transactions on the internet. I don't trust it. Putting all my card information out there on the internet. I just
that's smart. That's smart. There's so many scams out there, and there's so much, and you kind of wonder, with so much criminality costing this nation so much, why is the government not doing something about it? And I'm left to the conclusion, maybe the government is behind it. According to Kaspersky Labs, the Equation Group hacker collective is actually part of the NSA. So maybe they're behind all this ransomware, and it's just another way. Remember what I said earlier in the show. In order to keep funding the war machine, the government has to figure out more and more ways to plunder the American people, to plunder American businesses. This may be part of it.
Oh, sure. And I'm always getting one scam after another just on the phone. And the minute they ask me for credit card information, I tell them, well, I won't repeat what I tell them. Okay. But I think you can just imagine,
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I constantly get these kind of calls, and I'm not the only one, including fake IRS and fake Social Security Department, all kinds of stuff. I mean, these people, and usually when you push it a little bit, you'll find out it's somebody with either Indian or probably Pakistani accent, and it's probably come from out of the country. Maybe the Iwan brothers, I have a feeling the Iwan brothers might even be connected to all of this, some of these scams, You remember that, right? With the Iwan brothers?
Yeah, well, it's definitely tangled up with organized crime, but I can't imagine them wanting to use scam callers who don't sound like they're local, because that's definitely going to get people suspicious as to what's really going on. Now, I get a lot of scam calls on this cell phone. In fact, I'd say I probably get more scam calls than real calls on this cell phone. And there's only been like one or two that seem to have an accent. But again, the social justice warriors are out there saying, how dare you doubt somebody because they have a different accent? You're just being racist here. You go ahead and you give them your credit card information.
Well, you know what I do? See, I'll press 1 to see first somebody, the very American, usually a woman, very American accent, and all that, and then that's right, it's a recorded voice. Then I'll press 1 to see who is, and then that's when I get a foreign accent, usually an Indian.
Oh, I never even press the button. I never even press the button. As soon as I hear.
And then when you call the number back, you'll find out the number doesn't even exist.
Yes.
So that's how you figure it out. I reported it a couple of times to the sheriff's department here, but they don't know what to do. They said, oh, give me a duh type thing. So it's just you just got to be careful. I just tell other people too, be careful. Don't be a fool. Don't give any kind of important information out on I don't put it out on the net, and I don't put it out if somebody calls me. Hey, only if I know somebody, I know who it is, like on a phone or anything like that. You know what I mean? Other than that, no way. And I'll make the call. It's not that somebody will call me and then, let me give you my credit. Yeah, you can lower my interest rates to blah, 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 blah. I got rid of my credit cards anyway. One credit card, 0 balance. Because
we're certainly glad we didn't actually get rid of our credit cards because, they became our lifesavers on this move. Anyway, listen, Mark, I'm going to let you go here. We're coming up on a commercial break. We got another caller waiting on the line. Now, de Blasio has decided that he is going to solve the problem of inequality in the New York City schools by eliminating all gifted and talented programs. In other words, everybody gets treated like a moron, even if they're genius level IQ. I actually lived through this when I taught a year of remedial math at the high school level in Southern California. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Anyway, we're going to take another break for commercials. Back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go right back to the phones here to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. You were talking about these, phone calls that people get trying to sell stuff or scam people out of things.
Yes.
And one must remember, you have a cell phone. They're absolutely open.
Yes.
You know that. I have one of these voice over internet protocol home phones.
Yeah.
I don't use the cell phone, and I never get calls. Ever. Ever. And I'm not kidding. My email.
That's good for you, but, I used to have a Vonage line coming into my office to support my Los Angeles number from my production company. I got scam calls on it all the time, to the point where finally I just shut it off because I wasn't getting any work calls. It was just nothing but scam calls coming in on that Vonage line.
Yep. Well, obviously the line was compromised. Want to hear something even crazier, Mike?
Sure.
Apparently the company that owns the service that I use is Israeli. And it just recently has ads on it now. At the bottom of like this telephone pad kind of comes up when when you click on it or someone phones you. So now at the bottom there are ads. But I always keep this thing minimized. So I never see them anyway.
Yeah, the ads can get really annoying. I remember when cable TV first came out, the idea of paying for a cable TV subscription was you didn't have to look at the ads anymore. Well, then everybody got on cable TV, and today we're still paying for cable TV. It's got more advertising today than back when cable TV first started. And I'm sensitive to this because I used to work in advertising back in the 80s, and I knew what the rules were, how many ads you were allowed to have, what volume levels they were allowed to use. And all that's been thrown out. And it's just like, constant harangue, buy from us, buy from us, buy from us, buy from us. With what money, guys?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go, a little further than I should, but a third of someone's viewing pleasure, if that's what you want to call it, on programming, it's advertising. They're peddling soap and toothpaste.
Yep.
So, I haven't had programming in probably about 18 or 19 years, Mike. And, people are, what? Well, I had high-speed internet. So, I don't know about you, Mike, but I read the whole internet in 3.5 weeks as soon as I got high-speed internet. That was it. I went from A to Z in lightning speed. But seriously, everyone's out to make a buck, but scams are scams.
Yes.
And that sort of thing should not be allowed on the line because it chews up bandwidth unnecessarily.
That's true.
Number one, and number two, some people fall for it. And it can be stopped. It can be stopped.
Well, this is the jurisdiction of the Federal Trade Commission, which is supposed to maintain that do not call list. But they've completely fallen flat on their face on that one. They've done a complete face plant. We keep registering all of our numbers on the National Do Not Call list. We still get telemarketer calls. We still get scammer calls. It's open season on the American people's wallets.
It's more of a suggestion than the law, right?
No, actually, in the early days, the idea was that if you were a telemarketer here in the United States of America and you knowingly called a number on the Do Not Call list, you could face fines. But the enforcement fell apart. And I expect that's probably from lobbying efforts by the telemarketing group saying, come on, man, we got to make money. You got to just let the American people out there, you know, be our fodder.
Let them decide.
It's what we feed on.
Yeah.
Well,
let the American public decide.
Well, you know, they're working on this new system that will identify scam or telemarketer calls to your device, and already you've got these lobbying groups that are out there saying, oh, no, this is going to hurt our trade. This is definitely going to hurt our trade.
Not to mention free speech.
I have yet to see anybody, you know, justify intruding into somebody else's home with an ad as an expression of freedom of speech. But, you know, sooner or later, they'll probably get around to it.
Oh, yeah. You know, the farther left you go, I mean, the crazier things can get.
They really do.
Oh, yes. This Amazon fire. Mike.
Okay, I got to hold you over. Al, I got to hold you over. We got to take another break for commercials. Don't go away, and we'll be right back after these few words. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Al in Canada. And Al, you wanted to make a comment about the fires down in the Amazon.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, if it's so dire, Mike, I mean, if the facts are the facts, that is so dire, and this, you know, doesn't happen every year in between July and, you know, September, October, why is it that the EU they were only going to give, like, 20 million euros? Of course, the taxpayer is coughing up, I should say the bankers, well, the taxpayer is coughing up 15 million. 15 million? It's ridiculous, and they expect us to believe this nonsense.
It's a shakedown.
It's a joke. I don't understand it. I mean, I understand it. I just don't understand how people fall for this sort of thing. It makes no sense. You know,
it's a cause.
The lungs are on fire.
It's a cause. You know, we're afraid to face up to our corrupt politicians, but hey, we can save the Amazon and feel good about ourselves for doing that.
Yeah, and you know, these like, I don't know whether these lefties actually get any kind of enjoyment out of it at all, because I'm not one of them. But I do know this, Mike. You know, you can tell when you're talking to like a real liberal when the only wrong answer for how many genders there are is 2.
Yes.
And it's getting scarier and scarier. So, you know, hey, bring on the collapse, Mike. I'm ready.
Yeah, me too.
I'm ready for it.
Let's get the fireworks started.
Oh, yes, because I don't want to end my life with things getting worse than they are now. I really don't. I would like to end my life knowing that things are getting better. But I guess everybody has to get involved. Not just, you know,
I would.
These small little fringe groups.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Al.
The loudest.
We're going to let you go here, Al. We're going to switch over to Mike in Philadelphia. Aloha, Mike. And I think we have a much longer delay on this line than we did certainly at my home and certainly in Kauai. And I think that's why we're stepping all over each other's phone calls. But anyway, Mike in Philadelphia, what's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. This is Art from Philly. Can you hear me okay?
Art from Philly. Yes, I can hear you fine.
Right. All right. So I know quite a bit about what's happening with the telephone scams, and it was by accident. I run a business, so I get calls on my 800 number. And what I found out is they're going through a company called Cortel, C-O-R-T-E-L. They have 2 websites, .net and .com. So I complained to the FCC. They did nothing. Then when I actually gathered the information, I found out they're the ones doing it. What Cortel does is sell call center services to overseas companies, primarily India, I'm going to guess. So they have a legal right to put a block to any telephone number that's using their switches to call up and harass people. So I've actually found some success that when I actually get the bills coming in from my 800 number, I don't see the callers' numbers, the ones they spam with, but I see I'm being billed through Cortel to my 800 number. So if people want to know who's actually doing it, look at Cortel.net, Cortel.com, and start complaining to the FCC that they're harassing you. And the only way to deal with this is to shut down their switches. If they're going to, they're the ones who are bringing them in here, allowing them to spam, fake phone numbers, and then harass everybody. And I think they're doing it, literally probably 1 billion phone calls per month.
Easily.
So, right. So they have no incentive to do it until they actually, enough people start complaining to the FCC, say, put them out of business. That's how I see the deal with this. And I started getting some success. When I first complained, the calls went down to nothing for 3 months, and then they started ramping up again. So it's like every 2 or 3 months I got to complain to the FCC right up to Anit Patel to tell them to put a stop to it. But if they're doing it to me, they're doing it to quite a few other people. And you can see right on the website, what we sell is call center services. So that's how I see we have to deal with it, is say, who are the guys in America that have switches here, communication companies, that are allowing these call centers to come through their switches and harass the Americans. That's how you got to put a stop to it. That's how I see it.
Well, it's a complex technical issue, and unfortunately, the criminals, if you will, have the resources to keep evading any new technological blocks. What needs to be done is that those who are making the money from all of these telephone harassing calls, when they start going to jail, the problem will stop. But as long as the skirmishing, if you will, is fought at the lowest level and turned into a computer video game, the problem isn't going to get any better.
Well, I see we can make it better because if you have a switch here in America that's allowing the call centers to come into America, you can program that switch to basically say, if you want to do not call, then nobody coming through that switch is allowed to make any phone calls into America, at least in the do not call list. And how do you think they're getting all these fake numbers? That the only way they can be getting all these fake numbers is somebody in the communication systems themselves giving it to them.
Well, I imagine they're just generating them randomly, and the reason I know that is there was one scam call I got where the callback number looked vaguely familiar, and so after I hung up on the obvious scam presentation, I dialed that number back, and I got one of the major Hollywood studios that they had just quite by accident copied their number.
I don't think it's by accident. I think what's happening is using the service provider switches is what they call them. That service provider, either by neglect or whatever, is allowing them to reprogram that switch to make the phone numbers look like it's coming from local companies.
Oh, well, they definitely do that. I mean, one of the scams they were doing not too long ago is you'd see your caller ID number would just be a few numbers away from your own. Same area code, right. Same prefix, make it look like right. There was somebody in the immediate neighborhood. They are sneaky little bastards. There's no two ways about it.
Right. So until somebody actually encounters a disaster and hires a lawyer, say, for instance, you're trying to make a medical call and something tragic happens, and one of these spammers got involved with that, preventing you from using your phone service, until a lawyer actually takes these people to court, like they're taking Big Pharma to court, things are going to remain the same. So the way I see it, it has to be done. Like you said, some blood has to be made, incurred here, is that we need to find someone who's willing to start taking up class action suits against these service provider telephone communication companies that are allowing the spam calls to come into the country. Because it is coming from outside, and they could easily program those service provider switches to stop it.
Well, I know some are coming from outside. We've got one particular abuser Their corporate offices are right here in Honolulu, but their call center operates out of Guam, which is what supposedly makes them exempt from the do not call list.
Right. Well, that's what I have to say on it. I think until we actually put regulations on the service providers using the call centers, that are actually the call centers that gone through, until we put restrictions there, we're going to have to suffer through this. But that's the way I see we have to address this, because it's not that hard to determine, hey, this guy just sent out 1,000 phone calls in the past hour, and let's start tracking him down that he's basically spamming people and put a block on his switch at the switch that he can't make any more phone calls come in. Not as hard as you think to do that.
Well, see, the big problem here is most people don't understand is there are actually two caller ID signals. And one is for the consumer level. That's the one that you see on your phone. That's the one that can be spoofed and altered to fool you. Then there is the law enforcement caller ID, which is hard encrypted, and nobody can mess with that. Now, if they could make that law enforcement caller ID available to the consumer handsets, then we'd know the identity of the person really calling us. But apparently to get that caller ID, you literally have to go to court and get a warrant.
Right. Unfortunately, that's true. But until we say enough is enough and starts looking for litigation to put a stop to this, no different than what pharmaceuticals are being sued right now, like Johnson & Johnson and Purdue. Yeah. That's the way we're going to have to put a stop to this. We're going to actually have to sue the communication companies to say, stop selling their call center services and harassing American people. That's the way it's got to be done, how I see it.
Yep.
We're taking my time.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to W in Texas. Aloha, W. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to get your feedback on the whole Amazon situation. Because my understanding, and I learned this way back in middle school, high school, is that the tropical rainforest is not fit, and this is my understanding, it's not fit for like soybean farming and cattle farming, because after 2 or 3 years, the soil erodes very quickly and it becomes barren and almost desert. And so it seems like this is like, it's real unsustainable. So it's like when one piece of land becomes uncultivatable or not usable for cattle anymore, they just move on to more forest to burn down. And so that's just not a sustainable practice to me. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, you're absolutely right here. I mean, tropical rainforests may look very lush and green above the ground, but its root structures tend to be very, very shallow because they have evolved over soil with a high sand content. And of course, we know that the harvesting of the Amazon is partly for the wood from some of those magnificent trees. It is partly to create farmland, which, as you say, it will be exhausted very, very quickly. It's not a deep, rich soil. And then when the farming is exhausted, they turn it into housing developments. If you look at satellite photos of that whole area of the Amazon, they're just laying out the streets and the blocks like crazy.
Got you. And can I go off topic and ask a second question real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so this is, I know you're a history buff. So 400 years ago, and I am African American. 400 years ago, the first blacks were brought to Jamestown, Virginia. So this is like a commemorative, and that was August 1619. So anyway, I listened to this show today on the Breakfast Club. They had a lady up there. She's from the New York Times. She's doing a 1619 commemoration thing. And one comment she said really struck me. She basically said the black struggle actually pushed forward the manifestation of what was written in the Bill of Rights. In other words, the struggle that, black folks went through actually helped manifest those Bill of Rights and those words of freedom and rights and those types of things. And I thought that was a really interesting anecdote. Basically what she said, doing the research actually made her more patriotic because she realized that, she is a part of this country and that her our ancestors, black, white, everybody's ancestors, that struggle contributed to really manifesting these things that came out of the Bill of Rights. So I want to get your feedback on that.
Well, I think that's a very healthy attitude for everybody to understand this is their country, and all of our ancestors working together are why the country is the way it is today. And stop all of these liberal social justice warriors who are out there trying to say, well, no. The white people didn't do that. The blacks did, or the brown did, or the red did. And you white people, you should just get on out of here because you've got nothing to do with this. It's just another way of divide and conquer. But I think definitely, yeah. I mean, you really can't separate out the different groups and the different individuals, everybody working together since the earliest days of the colonies. The sum total of that, the epiphenomenon, if you will, is what we have today. And everybody does share the credit for it.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Ken in New York. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Art gives a good idea. I was just thinking most of these call centers in India come from a place or a large amount of them come from a place called Chennai, India. And I know this because a politician that we had up here a few years ago that moved up here was trying to run for office. He was shopping around for an office. He put himself forth as a self-made businessman. It turned out that he had opened one of the first centers in India called Office Tiger, and he made a small fortune off of it. Why not tariff these services?
That would probably be a very good idea, or maybe somebody ought to call up Pakistan and say, here's a target. I mean, the fact of the matter...
you just went blank. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you went blank for a second.
Yeah, we're getting some lag issues with this Wi-Fi and this Ethernet. There's a lot of things that could be done. The problem is our government doesn't bother doing them. Our government is too busy trying to start wars with Iran, too busy sucking up to Israel, too busy feeding their own face at the trough. And with the elections as crooked as they are, we're just not seeing that our politicians are responsive to us any longer.
Absolutely. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ken. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again. We're coming up here on another commercial break. And apparently Kirsten Gillibrand has now stepped out of the 2020 Democratic race. And that will be, they're starting to pare down. It was time for the shakeout here. Apparently Ilhan Omar is accused of committing perjury 7 times back in 2017 in court documents. And again, another state has passed a law requiring LGBTQ history be taught in public schools. Now, explain to me how this is going to help those students obtain a high-paying job. That's what I want to know. Where does this become practical? Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently Israel has just attacked Hamas again. This is a heck of an election campaign. You've got Netanyahu out there saying, look at all the blood. Look at all the bodily parts flying through the air. That's why you must vote for me. A little sick out there. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about how they couldn't come to an agreement to get the human poo off the sidewalks in Seattle because one of the councilmen was out there saying, well, you know, hoses were used against black people, so we can't use hoses here. And just to show you how completely disconnected from reality these people are getting, apparently students have signed a petition to ban the oppressive white stick figure in walk signals. Now, you've seen them. We've got them here. You've got the red hand that means stop, and then above that, you've got the little white figure that's walking. What are they going to do? Have it black on black? That's going to cause a lot of traffic congestion problems. Or are they going to? What color are you going to have it? If you're going to have it, green, you're going to offend the Irish. You're going to pay to have those stick figures, those walking stick figures, color cycle. Ooh, the taxpayers are going to love that one. It really is silly. We have become, as a society, convinced that it's more important to be symbolically correct than to actually get anything done. And as George Carlin used to say, I leave that kind of thinking to the symbol-minded. All right, over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is out there saying that McCabe lied at least 3 times and he leaked classified documents, and Christopher Wray has done 0 to reform the FBI. It's a corrupt system, self-perpetuating here. Okay, now then, apparently NASA got caught tampering with the temperature record again. Those of us who work there know what NASA stands for. Never a straight answer. Okay. Oh, I saw this one on the news earlier today. Joe Biden is out there saying racism is a white man's problem that is institutional in the United States. They're all pounding that racism card as hard as they can. And, of course, they're using it to attack Donald Trump. His rhetoric, it proves there's institutional racism in the country. It's a white man's problem visited on people of color. In my case, it's based on people who can't speak English. Apparently over in Great Britain, children as young as 3 could soon get sex change advice from a doctor over Skype. We got to take a break for station identification. Join us on the air. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open if you want to call on in. Still keeping an eye on Hurricane Dorian. And it's currently located, the center of the storm is currently located 45 miles northwest of St. Thomas, gusting to 80 miles an hour. That makes it a Category 1 storm. And everybody's trying to figure where exactly is it going to go? Where's it going to hit? It's a glancing blow on San Juan. It looks like from this satellite photo I'm looking at. And it looks like there's another major storm system forming up to the north. Do you know that hurricanes can actually collide? They can actually orbit each other. They can actually merge and become superstorms. If you ever saw the George Clooney movie, The Perfect Storm, it was based on a true event. And part of that event was 2 major North Atlantic storms merging into one superstorm. Okay, so let's go back to the phones here. Jim in Illinois. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael, this drug settlement that was done on Monday, I'm not all that happy about it because unless they go after the doctors, because the doctors, they're the ones that wrote the prescriptions, and they probably knew that the medication that they were writing on their prescription pad was not good, but they did it anyway. Until I see a lot of doctors go to jail, I'm not all that happy about this settlement.
Well, I want to see the executives at the pharmaceutical corporation who financially encouraged the doctors to write those prescriptions. I think they're the ones who should be in jail.
Well, why not both of them?
I think just getting those executives into jail will send the message that we need to send.
I would hope so. And my final question, considering the way Donald Trump has been acting, especially these last 2 weeks, do you think he's mentally unstable?
I have to be honest. I'm starting to wonder what's going on inside his skull. and whether the strain of the job is getting to him, or if somebody is dosing his morning coffee with something that just makes him sound dumb. But he does seem like he's erratic, that he's not thinking clearly, that he doesn't really have a continuity of plan with what he wants to do with the administration. He just seems to go from day to day to day, making it up as he goes along.
Right. And what's really, really sad, the Democrats, I'm not that impressed with them.
Well, I'm not impressed with either one of them. I haven't really been impressed with a politician since the day, what was his name? EDS. So, well, anyway, let's just put it this way. It's been a long time since I've been impressed by a politician. Obviously, Kennedy was impressive, but then I was only about, 11 at the time.
Wow. Well, Michael, that's it. You take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. And, all right, over in Georgia, there's this teenager who is suing her former school district. And apparently the problem is the teenager said that when she was a 16-year-old sophomore at Fayette County High School in 2017, she told administrators another student sexually assaulted her and pressured her into performing oral sex. The school then expelled her for the rest of the school year for sexual impropriety. And so now she's suing them. I hope she wins. I mean, she's the victim here. All right, let's go back to the phones. Chance in West Virginia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. Boy, this news is so bizarre, what's going on in this country. It's practically hard to believe. I wonder how long it's going to be, using this Hurricane Dorian as an example, as the first example. Now, since all this anti-white sentiment, to heap all this on the white race when all they've done was help people all around the world with earthquakes, hurricanes. They contributed time, efforts, money. I wonder how long it's going to be before they finally say, hey, look, we don't care what happens to other countries anymore. We don't get the respect we deserve for helping. We're not doing it anymore. We're only going to help ourselves. I'm wondering if that would ever materialize out of frustration. What do you think?
Well, first of all, you need to understand that most of the times when our government says they're helping another country, they're not really. They're just paying a bribe to that country's leadership to get some kind of business concession, access to natural resources, various things like that. So
I know, but Mike, I'm talking about the boots on the ground, the guys that go down there and help these people rebuild. Your average Joe.
Yeah, but they don't get a lot of rebuilding done. I mean, if you look at the aftermath of the war in Iraq, the stuff that they built fell apart almost immediately. Much of that money that was sent into Iraq for reconstruction, it simply vanished.
Well, speaking for myself, I would say, hey, look, if you people want to do this, carry on like this, make me feel guilty for having a good heart and wanting to help, I'm just not going to do it anymore. So there. I mean, that's how frustrated I am to be discriminated against in my own country and then be asked to go do something for somebody else. I'd say, no, that's it. This is where I draw the line. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, Mike. I guess it's frustration. It's just too much to put on the white race's shoulders, to ask them to do things over and over and put up with being called these names, these vile, wicked names. And I don't know, it's just too much. Okay, Mike, thank you now.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, there was a slight interruption here. We were getting the final price of what all of our excess shipping is going to cost. And as a point of fact, it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it might be. So anyway, so let's get on back here. Apparently, Stephen Fabrizio, Senior Executive Vice President and global general counsel for the Motion Picture Association of America, was arrested last Friday and charged with rape and blackmail. Apparently, he met this woman on one of these sugar daddy dating websites and threatened to tell her family and her employer that she'd accepted money for sex if she did not continue to have sex with him after she tried to break off the relationship. Well, he did wrong, but let's be honest, if you're going onto a sugar daddy website, you know what you're getting into, and you know the kind of individuals that you're dealing with. Okay. Something just hung. There we are. All right. Article out of Ethan Allen talking about, did Defense Secretary James Mattis commit war crimes in Iraq? I think a lot of people committed war crimes in Iraq. I mean, the whole war in Iraq was a war crime, if you really think about it. So Mattis repeatedly over the years has protected American service members who killed civilians, using his status as a division commander to wipe away criminal charges against Marines accused of massacring 24 Iraqi civilians in Haditha in 2005 and granting clemency to some of those convicted in connection with the 2006 murder of a 52-year-old disabled Iraqi who was apparently shot in the face 4 times. Yeah, that's a war crime. Give you a hint right there. All right, back to the phones here. Keith Rogers, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had one thing for you here. You know, Bolton's out there claiming right now that China stole design information for their new jet that looks just like the F-35. And I wanted to bring to attention here that for years now, China has been making parts for the F-35. And this is according to the Pentagon documents. But what's interesting about that is in that new John McCain 2019 security, Defense Security Pact thing, when you read through that thing, I got to about 60-some pages of it like that, but they're all outsourced jobs. And this falls in line with Rumsfeld's 2010 speech about the Pentagon bureaucracy of privatizing everything in the U.S. military. And so all these jobs have been outsourced to other countries. That's why we see Turkey was involved, China's involved, even Israel's involved, you know. And so if Bolton was so, irate about this, wouldn't it be an act of treason on the part of those in the Pentagon to outsource that to an alleged enemy?
Well, I'm sure when they outsourced it, China wasn't considered an enemy. In fact, if you look at China, the same thing with Russia. It wasn't all that long ago. We were all considered friends and buddy-buddy. It's just somebody here in the U.S. government just took that little switch on the wall that went from friend to enemy, and they threw it both for Russia and for China. And so those pre-existing agreements are an embarrassment, I will grant you, but they are still legally binding and enforceable.
Yeah, well, this all falls back to that NSC 68 doctrine there that was through Truman there. They have to have a constant enemy, and that's why we have the always the constant buildup in the military. The local jobs suffer, and it's only those in the defense area or arena, I'll call it, that they're like Wolf Blitzer. When Rand Paul was talking to Blitzer there about the bombing in Yemen, and of course Blitzer says, well, what about the jobs in the Defense Department there? And the same thing with Brian Williams talking about the splendor of those beautiful missiles. I mean, these guys are psychopaths, you know?
Yes. No, I agree with you, absolutely.
Just pointing that out there. The fact is, we wouldn't have this problem like that if they didn't have this constant war agenda, because that's what moves the economy. I sent an email to you earlier there about this Brazilian forest fires. And yet on your site, you have that stuff where the Alaskan tundra is now open for business, you know?
Yes.
And of course, remember, like in that video, The Shock Doctrine, they trained all these college kids on these campuses out throughout all Florida, everything like that, you know? And then they sent these kids back in their home areas, Brazilian's president down there had claimed at first that NGOs were behind the fires, and then they started blaming the students. And it just makes you wonder if this is more of this shock doctrine, or as Nixon would say there with Chile, to make the economy scream. Everything is being pressed on to the people right now. It's just like what the CIA has done abroad is now being done here at home. And we can see this by the miles of tent cities, the people crapping in the streets, no social reform whatsoever. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be. As billions of dollars in arms continue to flow, which creates more war to where U.S. soldiers are being killed, perhaps by their own country's arms that are being sent to these rapacious regimes that they later send in as policing.
Yes.
That's it, Mike. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And apparently some UN peacekeepers got ambushed. We're going to go back to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey is calling in with I guess you want to respond to one of the earlier callers.
It wasn't this caller, it was the one right before. Was it Chance from Virginia, West Virginia?
Yeah.
He said, wait, if they don't want our help, then who needs them? Well, I'm like, hey, dude, the British Empire and America gave smallpox to Indians. Were you bringing democracy? Mike, I don't know if that was a joke call. They lied about Iraq. George Bush was white. Okay?
Yes.
They lied about Iraq and how many people died there. Obama was black. Libya. Bill Clinton with Yugoslavia. This has nothing to do with black and white. This is about greenbacks in your pocket. You know.
Right.
I got so irate. Mike,
very well put.
Irate. You know, Mike, I'm so irate. Well, it had to be a joke call because I'm flabbergasted. Who's mostly on Wall Street ripping us off? They're all white.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I'm white Catholic, but I mean, come on now. What kind of crap is this? It's not a white and black issue. It's a I can't say good versus evil because these people think they're not evil. So it's just, you're doing right and you're doing wrong. You know, and it's a wrong issue. They're wrong. You know, it's just all these people in the EU, they're all, is there anybody in the EU that's black, Mike? They're all white. Tusk, Juncker, Angela Merkel. And like I said, I'm white. But I mean, we're not good. We're an empire, dude. Like, Britain was an empire. All empires are crap. But we're only doing it for our own elite. That's it. That's why when they bailed out Wall Street, they didn't bail you out. They bailed out their own group, their small group of people. That's it. So, Mike, I'm so tired of people. I know there's a war on white people, but it's actually not. It's all a game, man. Like, I don't understand why people can't see that. It's all about just what's right and wrong. That's it. And it's just about making money and power, and that's all it's about. It's not about Satan or God or any of this. You know? That's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good rest of the show.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And, boy, I'm really starting to feel the fatigue here. And apparently, once again, Nestle is going up against a local community. They want to siphon 1.1 million gallons of water a day from a natural spring, stick it in a bottle, and sell it at a huge markup. Although more and more places are starting to ban those bottles. Here in Hawaii, they're starting to phase them out. And you're expected to carry your own little high-quality thermal wall flask, and they'll provide filling stations where you can get water. But the days of the plastic bottle water may be numbered on that one here. And anyway, the opponents to this project are saying the fragile river cannot sustain such a large draw. All righty. Let's see. Apparently, Mattis is now sounding the warnings over the fractured alliances, which, yeah, that's been a big part of Trump's policy. is that his brusque attitude, if you will, his bullying, his demanding, his sanctions and tariffs, the American hegemonic alliance, if you will, is falling apart. Everybody's lining up on the other side. Apparently, there's been a new scandal surrounding Joe Biden. Executives are claiming that Biden's brother offered Biden's help promoting a business venture. So it's corruption here. Over in a Maryland sanctuary county, the fourth illegal alien has been arrested for rape just this month. And let's see. Oh, yeah, we saw this one before here. Apparently, there's this MSNBC host claimed on air that Trump has loans with Deutsche Bank backed by Russian billionaires close to Vladimir Putin. This is all based supposedly on an anonymous source. In fact, I think O'Donnell has already retracted this. I think I just saw that coming across the screen. So, yeah, they're just making it up as they go along here. Anyway, as Dustin was mentioning, Trump moves to open 16.7 million acre Alaskan rainforest to corporate exploitation. Now, an Alaskan rainforest is not the same thing as an Amazon rainforest. One is tropic, one is temperate, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently they just held the final hearing in Manhattan U.S. District Court yesterday, which was there to formally dismiss the charges against Jeff Epstein, which is typical when the accused is deceased. It was also held to allow testimony from some of the victims. Now, Epstein's own lawyers are telling the court that he likely died by assault, that his injuries are far more consistent with assault than with a suicide, which we all kind of knew anyway. Now, the story is that Jeffrey Epstein has been interred already in a mausoleum which also has the remains of his parents, and that mausoleum has had all identifying marks stripped from it so that people who are angry with Jeff Epstein wouldn't vandalize it. In other words, nobody knows where Epstein really is buried, if he's buried there at all. Personally, I think he's down in the Cayman Islands playing canasta with Ken Lay, yeah. All righty. So we already talked about this. Horowitz has concluded all 4 FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign were illegal. Apparently, the Israeli strikes in Iraq, rented lips, were launched from SDF-held Syria. That's what Baghdad believes. Boy, it's just getting. I'm really mostly worried about India and Pakistan because they are nuclear armed. Right. Let me find some more to report on here. Anyway, that's 800-313-9443 if you want to join in and help me with this last half hour of the show. And let's see. Okay, up in Michigan, there was a candidate who was campaigning on the platform of making the city as white as possible. He's now had to quit the race. And that was a little reckless here. We mentioned this one before. Over in Iowa, there's this college professor declared himself to be Antifa. He wanted to kill Christians. He wanted to bash Donald Trump with a baseball bat. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The Pentagon is standing in opposition to Israel's attacks on Iraq. Well, certainly it could destabilize the region, And I'm sure that the Pentagon understands full well. The only reason Israel has for attacking Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, it's Netanyahu's election campaign strategy. If it bleeds, I lead, apparently is what he's thinking. Okay. Okay, Chanel has gone PC. They've selected their first openly transgender model for a beauty campaign. This is probably going to go over about as well as those Gillette Be All That You Can Be male bash commercials. I think we're coming up on a point where these companies are going to realize going PC is bad for the bottom line. They're losing money. Gillette certainly did. There was another one, I forget off the top of my head right now. They went with this real, to me, sissy commercial for a manly product, and it just went down. And now we've got this one, a transgender model for a beauty campaign by Chanel. Not going to work. And I'll tell you why it's not going to work. It's not because people are insensitive or racist or whatever. We don't like having this stuff shoved down our throat. If you want to be transgender or LGBTQ, PDF, BFD, LSMFT, fine. Go live your life the way you want to live it. But this constant trying to shove it in our faces, that's where it's falling apart. That's where the problem is. This constant shoving it at our children, this constant indoctrination, this brainwashing. That's where people are getting angry and resentful. I don't care what you do in your home, in your place of employment, in your circle of friends. Just as you shouldn't care what I do in my home, my place of employment, my circle of friends. Live and let live. What's wrong with that? But this idea of this constant in your face, we're going to come in to your personal space and we're going to do what we do and show your kids what we do. And if you don't go along with that, well, then you're just being insensitive and you're being cruel and you're being unkind and you're the person who's in the wrong. I don't think so. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break here. We have 2 phone calls waiting online, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And over the break here, my lovely wife, who's off camera that way, raised a very good point. With Israel attacking Iraq, what is Muqtada al-Sadr, who is, I guess, still the leader of the Mahdi army, what is he likely to do about it? I mean, he could kick that whole thing back into high gear almost overnight. It's a very, very, very delicate situation. All right, we're going to take some phone calls now, starting with David in Iceland. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Hello, Mike. I was just wondering, this Fox 14 clip that was, I don't know if it was a mistake or whatever, is it not a time difference or? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry, I'm not on. Which Fox clip is this you're talking about?
Fox 14. That hasn't happened yet. Where the anchor is saying, about the shooting in El Paso in the Walmart.
Yeah.
And then she says, that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, yes. I remember that one. Well, I mean, the media's got these huge embarrassments, like the one where the WTC7 was still standing when the BBC reported it was down.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember that.
The problem.
But is it not just a time difference? Where is this Fox 14 located?
It sounds like it's an affiliate, and
yeah.
I think if you just web search Fox 14, it'll tell you what city it's located in. But my guess is that video clip has been Orwellized well and truly by now. But it is. It's the downside of live broadcasting, whether it's TV news at Fox 14 or the What Really Happened show on RBN. If you make a mistake, it's out there and there's no taking it back.
Yeah, no. I was just wondering, to be perfectly sure, because I was using this. I met one quite famous actor in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
I was just coming from the pool and I listened to the first hour and then I jumped into the pool and I met this guy. And I was telling him about this, and he is both a famous actor and also has been writing. And I was giving him ideas about, what he could use, like news that haven't happened. And I pointed him at this Fox 14. So I think this is quite easy to use something like this to wake up people. I just wanted to tell people that.
Well, I don't remember if I kept a copy of that clip, and if I did, it is in a container ship down in Honolulu Harbor, scheduled to sail in 2 days. So I couldn't get at it.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. The only thing you need to point, if you do just Fox 14, that hasn't happened yet, then it pops up.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to, if you have a confirmation about this, that it's absolutely, the right time or something.
Well, I mean,
okay. Thank you. Nothing else.
The video is the confirmation. All right, David. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Lauren in Ohio. Aloha, Lauren. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, what a nice man. And he should recommend to that guy whatreallyhappened.com.
I agree.
That writer, huh?
I agree.
Yeah, if that writer wants to write about some stuff, because I'll tell you what, you would have a hot market for things that are really going on, so people could start understanding. They don't seem to be able to pay attention long enough to, you know what I mean, to really grasp the depth of, wow. But anyway, hey, I'm glad you're my neighbor. I'm in Ohio.
Yes,
and
what
I'm
part?
a naturopathic doctor. Huh?
What part?
Southeastern Ohio. You know where Ohio University is? Like Athens?
Yeah, I do. When I was very young, my family lived in New Philadelphia, Ohio.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we're close by, but I do naturopathic doctor. I was a drug rep for 9 years, and then I almost died. Tried regular drugs and all that. Couldn't fix this, and I had mycoplasma pneumonia, and my whole family was sick, and we were terribly
ill. It's exactly what I had. It's exactly what I had 5 years ago.
Well, here's the thing. These are bioweapons, and there's papers that I try to get people to read. Mycoplasma, the linking pathogen in neurosystemic diseases by Professor Donald Scott. And it tells you all the agencies involved, CIA, NIH, Bethesda. It tells you that Dr. Shai-Ching Lo holds the patent for mycoplasma, and he's the guy in charge of figuring out what's wrong with 400,000 soldiers that died after they came home from the Gulf. Like 28 died there, and then 400,000, 500,000, just melted away and died. And I mean, I had friends among these people, and it's a terrible thing. But anyway, I was going to tell you, if you were at all interested, if you and Claire want, I could help you with your back and all the stuff that's going on with you. That's what I do, and I will say I'm pretty good at it. And I've got my
it's nice to meet somebody with your humility. And I'll tell you what, once we're settled in, once we've got our...
The reason I'm not humble is because I have so many people that are in so much pain. I mean, it ruins your life. I had fibromyalgia, frozen shoulder, couldn't raise my arm above my shoulder. It was bad. All my blood vessels popped on my feet and up the back of my leg. It was terrible. And that's why I'm saying I've been that sick. I hear you when you're saying you're tired, and I'm just telling you, I want you to have hope and know there's something you could do that's natural, that's, easy, quick, and once you know the rules, you're going to just dig life. It's really fun. But anyway, the other thing I was going to say was the moral decay in this country. I got a quick set of solutions. It's 4 things. First off, obey God, 10 Commandments. Even if you're an atheist, in the Declaration of Independence, it mentions the Creator. Okay, I don't care who you call it, but no man made any other man, except that you're a mother or a father, and then you only have control of that child until they're 20. And then you turn them over to pay their tithe, live their life, be constructive and productive through this experience. You see what I mean? We've lost all this, putting these kids in school. So first off, obey God, 10 simple commandments. And even if you just stick to the don't kill people, don't steal their stuff, don't covet. What are we doing in all these countries? Stealing their stuff.
Yes, we are.
Well, and then the next one is keep your money in your pocket. If you don't owe taxes, don't pay them. Read the rules, weissparis.com or there's several different places that you can look at in terms of what the rules are, but there's two sets of citizens, and all the rules are on weissparis.com. Go to the resource section. This guy, thousands of cases in the IRS. It's just like paperwork. They just say, okay, and stamp you American citizen, American national, as opposed to federal citizen liable for taxes. So keep your money in your pocket. They're not doing good things with this money. Keep your children in your home under your control. As far as the education system, when you look at all these Satanists and pedophiles, look at this Epstein stuff. This is going on in the schools. All these, remember those kids that were all kind of stuff like this has been going on. We need to be responsible for our offspring and stop just turning them over to these crazy social justice warriors. They're pumping these kids out. They're destroying children, and then they're not even getting an education out of it. I mean, at least remember when they took the Indians from their moms and dads, beat them if they spoke their own language, but they gave them a real education. You really learned 2 + 2 is 4, and you could read and knew American history. Now we don't have any of that. Why are we giving them money and access to our children? And the last thing, boycott big business. Do business with, RBN, all the smaller companies. And we need to start, that's what I'm saying. I want you to come on and, we can network and, people get together and help each other being constructive. But that's what I mean. It needs to be that we change what we're doing from the destructive things that we're doing. Turn off that television, turn on, Republic Broadcasting. Educate yourselves. This is war. We're being invaded at our borders. But I won't keep you anymore because do you have any other people waiting, honey?
Yes, we do.
Okay, let me let you go. But God bless you. I'm so glad you're close now. I can't wait to actually meet you in person.
All right. Well, thank you. I look forward to it as well. Anyway, we're going to switch over to Mike in Brazil. Aloha, Mike. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. Are you hearing me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. I'm sorry. I know you have a rule, one caller per show, right? But
yes,
I heard this comment that Donald Trump may not be in his right mind. Okay, now, people need to realize that he's surrounded by psychopathic criminals, psycho criminals. And the guy is so easily manipulated that you don't, today he says one thing and tomorrow he goes over it and he does the exact opposite. Okay, so don't blame the guy. He is very easily manipulated, and with Pompeo and Bolton on his side, there is no wonder that he's taking such sharp turns in everything he does. So the problem is that he's not running the country. Somebody else does. And people need to keep that in mind. Donald Trump may not be the best president we had, but he's not the worst either. Imagine what would have happened if Hillary Clinton would have been president. I want people to keep that in mind, okay? So Donald Trump is not perfect. I understand that. I'm not trying to take his side, but you want to be as objective as possible. So when people complain about Donald Trump that he says one thing, he does another, okay, you have to remember that John Bolton is the one who does the foreign policy. So when Trump comes up with a proposal, John Bolton overrides him. And Pompeo overrides him. So he says,
well,
okay,
see,
all right,
that
so
shouldn't be happening, and that's Trump's fault. That's Trump's fault. Trump is the boss, okay? And he says, this is going to be our foreign policy.
Right,
your
Mike.
job is to implement it. And if Bolton goes... Mike,
You're 100% correct. He's the boss. supposed to dictate the terms of the agreement, right? But he doesn't.
If Bolton goes on out and changes the foreign policy on his own, that is a firing offense.
Yeah, I understand. I understand this, but people try to paint Donald Trump in different colors, and the guy has no experience in politics. He's practically a newbie in politics, so he's taking the advice of his closest advisors. In which case, we're talking about Pompeo and the other guy, Bolton. So he goes along with him. And if the policy is disastrous, then he suffers the consequences, which gives the Democrats the ammunition to take him down. So we all know this, and I don't know the problem. It's pretty complicated with Donald Trump because he doesn't have a spine. He doesn't know how to say no. He doesn't know how to say you're fired. Your policy is destructive. Go away. He doesn't know how to say that. He just goes along with him. You know, this is the problem that he has. And
yes.
The last lady that called, God bless her soul, she's right. You know, humans, the way we are, we have defects. We have certain things that normally are considered undesirable. But the problem is that people should. I took biology. I majored in biology, molecular biology, and I have this thing about the second pair of chromosome, which appears to be fused 3 chromosomes into one. One taken from an ape-like creature, and another chromosome taken from a different entity, okay? And basically you have to have 2 pairs. You have to have 1 pair, one from father, one from mother. So in this case, we have 3, okay? So it's a never-ending controversy over this thing. But what I want to say is that humans are not all that bad. It's just that we have bad leaders and the people who listen to the wrong people, like in the case of Donald Trump. I love the guy. He's very funny. I look at the TV and I see him there, and I love what he's saying. But the problem is when he goes back to the White House, his entire attitude changes. And that tells me somebody else is running the show, Mike, and it's not Trump. Okay? So I'm sorry for the people who put all their hopes in Donald Trump. He's not the savior of the nation, nor will he ever be. And God forbid somebody in 2020 from the Democratic Party is going to take position of that high office. We're going to have a big, big problem, Mike. Anyway, I'm going to leave you on this note, and have a good remaining show.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And obviously, the big problem I have right now is Biden. He's not getting a lot of traction. His poll numbers are dropping. Right now, between Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it's a single percentage point between each of them. So there is no clear front runner. And I'm concerned about, we are still hearing rumblings about a movement to draft Hillary Clinton in for 2020. And I think this is part of her strategy because she's still out there keeping her face on TV, keeping her name out there in front of the public eye. And that's not something that you do if you're thinking about retiring. All righty, let's see. Okay, that caller dropped here, so getting him back. I'm a little puzzled at this one. Apparently there's an appeals court ruling saying that a Christian video company cannot be forced to film a same-sex wedding, which I'm in agreement. If you have a business, you're allowed to choose who you and who not to have business with. But this flies in the face of all those court cases where bakers have literally been sued out of business for Christian bakers for refusing to make gay wedding cakes. And all of these cases seem to involve these gay activists who go on out and target these Christian video companies and these Christian bakers. Again, it's like I was saying before, it's the in-your-face attitude that is the problem, not your lifestyle. So anyway, we're coming up here on our final commercial break for the show. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today on this Wednesday. And again, it looks like we had a good connection from this hotel. And so we will be back tomorrow and Friday. And then Friday, of course, we pack everything up and head for the airport Saturday morning for one hellaciously long flight. And I'm going to keep my wife plied with alcohol so that her back doesn't bother her much. Yes. We'll take the aircraft with a wheeled dolly like from Silence of the Lamb. So anyway, alrighty. Apparently, world's top wealth manager urges clients to sell stocks. I don't know. I mean, it's a very volatile market right now. And apparently somebody started an urban legend that this Dairy Queen location was making burgers with human flesh. And you'll say, oh, come on, that's silly. But these can really have a tremendous impact on a company's bottom line. I remember when I was a kid, somebody started the rumor that McDonald's hamburgers were actually sliced up from these giant mutant pink worms that had been created by McDonald's evil scientists. And they would just slice them up, put them on a bun. And enough people believed it and stopped buying the burgers. It caused a major problem. And no, as in point of fact, McDonald's burgers are not made from giant pink worms. Not sure what they're made from, but not that. One of the problems we have in this world of synthetic foods is that when somebody says something is beef, they don't mean piece of a cow. They mean an approved product name for something that consists of some parts of cow and some filler. And the idea is to make you think that you're getting a good, healthy, wholesome meal, when in point of fact, I think the planet's running out of food. I really do. Okay. So apparently, again, Israel bombed Iraq for the first time in nearly 40 years. Everybody's unhappy with that one. Apparently, over in Gloucester Township, their police has a new 911i emergency dispatch system that allows the service operators to see video live stream from the caller's phone. So if you call 911 from your phone, they will see what's on that camera here. Now, apparently, there's a new class action lawsuit against Apple and Samsung saying that their radiation exceeds FCC limits. This is kind of like the gas mileage scandal. Okay, there's the music time for me to get out of here and enjoy Waikiki at night with my lovely wife. So stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please donate to RBN. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. And share what you know with everybody else. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.